In the first scene of the movie, Sister Mary is shown praying in an Italian convent before she watches for the Mother Superior to sleep off. She quietly opens the drawers and steals her keys. She is on the run. Mary arrives at the gates and comes dangerously close to leaving, but before she can get away, the other nuns grab her and break her leg through the front gate. Mary wakes up in a coffin, crying out for help in vain. As Sister Cecilia, a young nun, arrives in Italy, she is being questioned by immigration officials. She clarifies that her intention was to take her vows at the same convent. After receiving permission, she boards a waiting vehicle to be driven to the convent. When she arrives, she meets Mother Superior, who thinks she's attractive, and Sister Isabel gives her a tour of the convent before telling her the catacombs are off limits. She was introduced to some of the older nuns and they came across some who seemed to be practicing songs for the choir. Isabel also tries to suggest she doesn't show up that night to take her vows, but Cecilia assured her that she was willing and prepared. In addition, Cecilia meets Sister Gwen, her roommate, and the two share stories of their lives before being called by God. Sister Gwen smoked a cigarette while asking Cecilia why she left America to come to the Italian convent. She told her of how Father Sal Tedeschi found her out and invited her. Cecilia shows up that evening after settling in to profess her vows under Father Sal Tedeschi and Cardinal Franco Merola. She kissed Cardinal Franco Merola ring after. Tedeschi traded stories with Cecilia, telling her of how he came to find his purpose at the convent. Tedeschi believes Cecilia was picked by God for a specific mission when, at a small celebration, Cecilia tells him about how she almost drowned in a freezing lake after her heart stopped for 7 minutes. She excused herself and left the party. She hears some strange sound and goes to explore. She walks through a metal gate and saw a nun laying face down praying in a strange tongue. When she touches her, she saw her face was covered with a red cloth. Right that moment, Mother Superior walks up to her and when she asked what that place is, she was shown a long nail. Mother Superior explained that it was brought to them by Constantine's mother and implied that it was the same nail used in crucifying Jesus. When the nail was placed in her hands, she collapsed. She goes to confess her sins to Cardinal Franco Merola in the confessional booth. 5 nuns were holding her down and one of them stabbed her with a knife. When she jerked up and realized it was just a dream, a strange figure was standing at the door. She turned the lights on but the figures disappeared. Cecilia begins to take up the responsibilities of the convent, which include having to chop the heads off of chicken for food and tending to the elderly when they defecate or pass away. Doing laundry one day she sighted Sister Isabel staring at her in a strange way. Later that night, while she slept, an old nun cut a lock of her hair and called her Blessed One. Cecilia leads her back to her room and saw a branding under her feet. Few days later, Cecilia throws up during a bath. It is discovered that Cecilia is pregnant through an immaculate conception because she has never had sex with a man. After she is examined by the medical team and questioned by Tedeschi and Merola, Cecilia was confused but Father Tedeschi assured her that she was chosen because God saved her from drowning many years ago. They held a ceremony to crown her and the other nuns begin to see her as the next Virgin Mary, even though Cecilia feels overburdened and overpowered by this new responsibility. They treated her different even at mealtime, which made Sister Gwen jealous. In a moment of anger, while Cecilia was having a bath, Sister Isabel tries to drown Cecilia during her second trimester and insisting that the test be redone with her and saying that she should have been chosen. Sister Gwen raises alarm and others came to her rescue. During one of her checkups she begs them to allow her see a different doctor outside the convent but they refused her request. They inform her it would be safer for the baby and herself to stay in the convent and that people outside the convent might not understand Immaculate Conception and want to hurt her. Afterwards, Isabel leaps to her death from the chapel's roof. The others try to stop Gwen from criticizing and questioning what is happening in the convent when she starts to speak up. Cecilia hears people crying for assistance and wailing at night. She finds Gwen bound to a chair with her tongue severed as a kind of discipline for her previous outburst. Before finding Gwen, Cecilia also finds a cabinet file containing all of her childhood records. She tries to scream but was stopped by the old nun, who told her she will never leave. One morning, Cecilia is heard yelling in anguish. When the others arrive, she is covered in blood and appears to be experiencing serious pregnancy problems. They couldn't call their resident doctor because it was a Saturday and he was unavailable, so Father Tedeschi decides to drive Cecilia to the hospital instead. As Tedeschi takes Cecilia to the hospital in a car, one of the nuns looks beneath her bed and finds a headless chicken with blood on it. That was when she knew that Cecilia had fooled them all and the blood was not coming from inside her. After speaking with Tedeschi, who swiftly understands what's happening, Cecilia is forced to flee. Sadly, she is apprehended and taken back to the convent. After forcing her to take a shower, they tied her to a chair while she waited for Tedeschi. Tedeschi then goes on to tell Cecilia that their objective is to discover a chosen Virgin Mother and use DNA from the cross nails to reproduce the second coming of Christ in the lab. He believes Cecilia was picked for this reason because of her survival in the water. He then took her to an underground lab where she sees fetuses in bottles, which were failed attempts at recreation. Tedeschi branded her feet with hot iron so she won't be able to run away again. In the confession booth, she talks to Cardinal Franco Merola and asks them to stop what they are doing to her, which is terrible, but he responds that only God can stop them. When Cecilia reaches the third trimester, she knows her unborn child will either be the Antichrist or the new Messiah. Just as the Mother Superior is performing an ultrasound, she takes a crucifix and bludgeons her to death before fleeing. She then uses her rosary to strangle Merola, after stealing the nail from the safe. Eventually, her water bursts and she felt a sharp pain. She then goes to Tedeschi's lab and starts pouring ethanol all over it. When Tedeschi shows up, he tries to stop Cecilia, but she manages to escape by hitting him on the head with a glass tube. She locks the lab doors, barring him, but he was quick to grab at her and tried to strangle her. She uses a lighter to light the ethanol after breaking one of his fingers. Tedeschi appears to be inside the lab when it explodes, but he puts out the fire and smashes through the door. Cecilia starts to run. As Cecilia begins to make her way through the catacombs, she stumbles upon Gwen's corpse. Tedeschi grabs her as she reaches for an escape route, his body terribly burned. Tedeschi begins attempting to remove the baby out of her stomach when Cecilia reaches for the nail she was hiding and uses it to stab Tedeschi's throat, ending his life for good. Cecilia makes her way out, but then screams in anguish when she finally gives birth and bites the umbilical cord off. Although the baby is not visible, its inhumane snarl and rasping sound suggest that this is not another Jesus. Cecilia then approaches and picks up a big rock. She screams and smashes the creature. Don't forget to click the like and subscribe button. Thanks for your support. The end.